Hi guys, thanks for watching this new tutorial up on Patreon here. This is my daughter's rabbit. So the first of all, before we get into everything that I'm doing here, the image that I took is obviously my own. I took the photograph of the rabbit on my own camera. If you do want to follow along and you want to create this image, this drawing yourself, and if for whatever reason you want to sell it, that's absolutely fine. There's no copyright on this image. It's a photograph I took of my daughter's rabbit, and that's the top and bottom of it. So don't think that if you draw this and it's really good that you can't sell it and make money for yourself. You can, and it has nothing to do with me. So hopefully throughout this tutorial, I think there might be one or two bits where I'm going to up my game a little bit with regards to the tutorial and cut away from what I'm actually doing on the rabbit and maybe show you what I'm trying to portray to you on like a demonstration. But we'll see if any of those bits arise. So as you can see here, I'm working on the eye. Now, I started on the eye there with a light blue because there is she's outside and there's like a sky highlight. A highlight of the sky just in the top corner of her eye there. And also, as you can see, I didn't just go in with straight black and do her eye. I went in with the really dark indigo and also like a really dark purple color from the Caran range. And what that does is, now I'm coming in with black, but before that I had in two other colors, and hopefully what that achieves is a little bit of depth within the color, so it's not just like a flat black. When you look at the eye, you can see. And the reason why I use blues, whenever you're doing creating a color like black with watercolor, you can use reds and things like that. But because she's outside and there's a bit of sky reflecting in her eye, I used the darker blues to try and help me whenever it comes to this bit. Now this bit here where I'm creating the highlight, I'm actually going into some of the darker bits and pulling it out, because the highlight is faint. It's not really bright or anything like that. If you look at the reference image, it's not a really like white bright highlight, but it is blue. And so you can see the colors here that I'm using from the Derwent Lightfast range as well. That was a midnight blue that I used there, and then if I'm using this like sky blue. I'll have a list of the colors that I used, because the colors that I've used for this image are really odd. They're not the colors that you would go to ordinarily for a rabbit. But if you look at the reference image, you can see, and I think it's just because of she was outside, the light, the way the light was reflecting on her coat, things like that. I think that it just gave her this kind of like reddy browny color. So there's a lot of heathery colors and lavender colors that I've used. You can see here for her eye here, I'm coming in here with this burnt sienna color. I think this is burnt sienna 30%. So really light at the beginning, just to do the little fleshy bit round her eye. But then I come back in with the darker burnt sienna, because if you look at the reference image, and you should be able to zoom in quite good on this reference image. It's quite a high def image. But if you should be able to zoom in on it. But if you zoom in on it on your computer, you'll see that there is kind of like a darker part that goes around it. So I'm coming in here now with this darker burnt sienna color to give me that appearance of a darker rim going around the bottom part. You'll see me coming in here now, just very slightly round the outside of that rim, so leaving the inside lighter. And what that does is, as well, that just gives a little bit of three-dimensionality to the image, that obviously the way the light is reflecting on her eye and what have you. So Again, just coming in here with this really pale lavender colour. And like I say, when you're looking at this reference image, you'll see also as well, I'd like to say, I have supplied the sketch, so that if you want to print it off or whatever and trace the outline of it, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. So you can see here I'm coming in with this salmon, this Lightfast, Derwent Lightfast salmon, and I'm just blending those colours all together. This is like a pinky white from the Caran Luminance range. It's not. This isn't the white. This is the really super pale pink that I'm using. So just coming in here now to do her nose, but I'm starting off with this lighter colour here, just so that it's easier to help me create the very small highlights that there are on her nose. Her nose is actually, it's quite dark, and the angle that she's at makes it a little bit odd looking. But again, I'm coming in here now with this darker colour, but this isn't black. The colour that I'm using for that part is Carmine Lake, and it's from the Caran Luminance range. So it's like a really super dark red. Although on her nose there, like I said, it looks black, and I do come in with a darker colour. This is like the Derwent drawn Mars ruby earth colour, and I thought that that would give me the darker colour that I needed, but it wasn't dark enough, so I'm coming back in again here now with this Caran Carmine Lake. That colour there that I'm using, that is the let me just see which one it is. It's the Caran Indigo Blue. So that's a really super dark blue. It came in the new 24 set actually, and it was nearly everybody that got that new 24 set from Caran absolutely loved that dark indigo. But again, that dark indigo, when you look at it, when you're looking at a drawing like this and you see some bits that look black, just putting down black is I suppose it's okay, but what you want to do is you want to try and add some colours to mix up your blacks, because for some reason, if you put like a really dark red and then you use black over the top of it, or in this case here I'm using this dark indigo, and when you lay down that dark indigo, you can see that it's blue when you do it in a light layer. So when you come in over the top of it with a darker colour like black, it just helps to mix and blend that blue in with the black. And I think it just seems to enrich the black and make it even darker and deeper, which is what you want a lot of the times. So I'm coming in there with a brown ochre, brown ochre 50%, which is quite light. And again, if you look at her nose there, just on the top ridge of it, it looks like a little bit of a gingery colour. And that was the reason why I used that brown ochre. That dark colour that you just seen me use, that was a burnt sienna, the Caran burnt sienna. Most of the pencils that I've used here, nearly all of them, have been the Caran Luminance or the Derwent Lightfast range. That's a Naples yellow there that I was using. Again, the little, it almost looks white, a little white moustache underneath her nose there. But it's not quite white. It's like a dirty white color. So that's why I used that very, very light layer of Naples yellow. So that this color here that I'm using, this is the wheat color from the Derwent Lightfast range. Now, when it comes down to, when we get to the fur of Miss Honey, like I say, I used a lot of colours like violet pink from the Caran range. You see me using there the ruby earth, but I also used a little bit of Mars violet. But I used the Mars violet from the Derwent Lightfast range, and the Dusky Pink. And like I say, burnt sienna. Now the burnt sienna in the Caran Luminance range has like a 30%, 50%, and then burnt sienna. So I used all of the burnt siennas in that range to give me the highlights and what have you. I'm just coming in here with this is a sepia, the plain sepia color within the Caran Luminance range, just to give me these darker areas here that you can see on her fur. And all it is just where the fur, maybe the wind is catching the fur, and it's just parted the fur to give that darkness. So I always find creating that type of fur where, you know, the wind is parting the fur of the animal and it creates those dark bits. I've always found that difficult to achieve that outlook, to achieve that look. I also used that colour that you just see me there using was Violet Grey, which again is part of the Caran Luminance range. Now, like I was saying, when it comes down to doing the greys of the rabbit, I used the French Grey, and I think French Grey. Let me see what the other one was. Sepia 50% and then Sepia. So French Grey, Sepia 50%, and then just the flat sepia colour for the darker parts of the fur. But I also used, whenever it came down to the lighter bits, I used Sepia 10% as well. So I'll try. If I remember, I will list all the colours that I used. I know it's not something I ordinarily like doing, because I like people to try and look at the image and use whatever colours you think are right for the piece. And as a lot of artists will tell you, it's more about the values than it is anything else. It's more about getting the values right than it is getting the colours right. You can do this rabbit in any colour you want, any range of colours, but so long as you get the values right, that's what's most important. And you'll see, actually, when I get to about almost towards the end, I add on another half an hour of the drawing, which I record. But I got to a point where I thought, right, okay, it's done. And then I stepped away from the drawing for a couple of days, and then I came back to it, and it just looked flat. And what I mean by flat was that the body of the rabbit just looked flat. I needed to darken up the bottom part of the rabbit to give her little form, her little fat body, which she does have. She's a little plump rabbit. And that I think that helped me to see where I need to darken in the image, and I was able to do that. I was able to come back in after a couple of days of not doing anything with that particular drawing, and just once it's finished, it definitely gave her a little bit of form. But while we're watching this, okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about Miss Honey. So Miss Honey is Amelia's rabbit, and the rabbit is 4. And Amelia's had this rabbit, obviously, for the 4 years. We got her when she was just a tiny little bunny. And she's really helped Amelia through a lot of the problems that Amelia has had. And so, as a result of that, Amelia and the rabbit are really, really close. And whenever, like, if I go into Amelia's bedroom at night to give her a kiss goodnight or something like that, the rabbit has a cage in, like a hutch, like a place where she sleeps in Amelia's bedroom. And there's like a litter tray there for her and like all her food and what have you. But when Amelia's in the room, the rabbit has free range. So it just kind of like comes about the bedroom floor and jumps up on her bed and kind of just snuggles in with her. When Amelia's watching TV or something like that, the rabbit will just lie on top of her and just go to sleep. So if you come in to give her a kiss goodnight, the rabbit will like wake up. If the rabbit's down on the floor, if Miss Honey's down on the floor, she comes running straight over to your feet, as if almost to stop you going any further closer to Amelia. And as you kind of like just edge past her a little bit, she will keep following you to Amelia. If she's lying on Amelia's chest and you bend down, just let me turn off this iPad. If you bend down to give Amelia a kiss or something like that, the rabbit will come up to your face, and she doesn't like you getting too close to Amelia. I mean, it is a lovely relationship, and Amelia actually there is like a cult status with this rabbit. I think her name is quite funny, Miss Honey. So that conjures up some sort of prim and proper little rabbit, but she's far from it. She's a destructive little thing, and she's quite scary when she's in protection mode against when she's in protection mode for Amelia. But she is adorable. We do love her. She's not like a dwarf rabbit, but she's not a full one of those big rabbits. She's quite a tiny little petite package, and she just adores Amelia, and Amelia adores her, and the relationship is gorgeous. And I'm just dreading the day when she dies, because I don't know what Amelia's gonna do. But I forgot to mention, so the paper that I'm using here as well in this is the Derwent Lightfast paper. So basically the vast majority of the colours or pencils that I'm using here is the Derwent Lightfast and the Caran Luminance. Occasionally I use some of the, like I said, one or two of the Derwent Drawn range, and the black that I used was the Faber-Castell Polychromos. And I think that was about it. Oh, I used actually two of the Caran Pablo colours as well. Those colours were the sepia, again, because the sepia in the Pablo range is a little bit different from the sepia in the Caran Luminance range. It seems like a warmer sepia than the Caran Luminance one, but so that was the only reason why I used that. And then the Bistre, Bistre color as well, because that's kind of like a really warm browny grey color also. So they were the colors that I used from the Pablo range. Oh, and Brownish Biege, which again is another one of the Pablo range colors, and I used those for the lighter parts of Miss Honey's back, which when we come to that bit, I'll go over that bit with you as well. So the Derwent Lightfast, I mean, you will see in this drawing as we're going through this, the amount of layers that I use building the fur up on Miss Honey here is really quite remarkable. And it'll probably, from a standpoint of somebody watching this tutorial, it could come across as perhaps a little bit monotonous, and it's not until you watch the video in like a fast mode, like if you go and watch the speed drawing of this, which I'll put up on YouTube. If you watch the speed drawing, you'll see how dark she does get over the course of the layers. But as you're putting these layers down and you're building them up, sometimes you get to the point where you think you're not getting anywhere, but you are. And the Derwent Lightfast paper really, really does come into its own when it comes to layering up. This paper just keeps on taking as many layers as you want to put down on it. I've never got to a point when I've been using... Now, when I'm using the Derwent Lightfast paper, I must admit, I've never used it with Prismacolor pencils because they're a much, much softer core. So there could be an issue, or there could be a point where on a softer cored pencil, the Lightfast paper might give up taking layers. But when I'm using pencils like the Luminance, the Derwent Lightfast, the Faber-Castell Polychromos, or the let me think what else, the Pablo, the Derwent Artist, the Derwent Pro Color, and the even the Holbein color pencils as well, the Derwent Lightfast paper just it's phenomenal, really is excellent. I can remember when Derwent first came out with this paper, they sent some people test samples to test and give their opinion on it, and I was fortunate enough to be one of those people, and I loved this paper right from the get-go, and I had no idea it was going to be the Derwent Lightfast paper when I used it, But at the time, I can recall writing the note. I've still got all the notes that I wrote whenever I sampled this paper, and I just loved it. So you can see here now as well, one thing that's very important when you're building up, when you're going over your layers here with the likes of Miss Honey here, if you look at your reference image, it's very clear to see the direction of the fur. If you look at the photograph that I've provided here, the direction in which the fur is going, even on her face, is really prominent. So from that respect, it's easy for you to make sure that you stay following that direction. Don't start. Sometimes you'll hear, and I've said it as well, when you're adding layers, do it in small circles, that type of thing. But when it comes down to animals, it's a very different technique that you use, or that you can use. And making sure that you follow the direction of the fur is one technique that is, I think it's quite important. I say important, and I say it's one technique because I've watched artists give tutorials, and sometimes some of them will turn around and say, don't do this and don't do that, and you mustn't do this and you mustn't do that, and don't fiddle about here and don't fiddle about there. And that's all very well and good, but the thing is, there are many, many different ways in which you can create a piece of artwork and finish it off. And the reason why I know that is because I've watched so many different artists over the years on YouTube, and I've taken little bits of different artists and applied it to, whether it's a color pencil drawing or whether it's pastel artwork that I'm doing, and that there's so many variables come into play whenever you're doing a piece of artwork. The type of paper that you use, and the genre of art that you're drawing, the type of pencils you're using, whether they're soft or whether they're hardcore, whether they're pastel pencils, whether they're watercolor pencils or just watercolors. So many different variables, and for I think any tutor to say you mustn't do this, hard and fast rules, I personally don't subscribe to that type of method of teaching. I just think that there are, especially when art is concerned, obviously different subjects are obviously, like maths and stuff like that, there are hard fast rules that you got to stick to. But when it comes down to art, I just think that there's so many different ways that you can create beautiful artwork. I don't think anybody should be telling you that you mustn't do this or you mustn't do that. You have to find your own way and if that means by, just watching different tutorials and taking little bits that you like or that you find easy, or whatever it is, the reason is that you take those little bits, then so be it. You've got to be happy when you're doing this. This isn't something, I don't think art is something that should be a chore for you. It shouldn't be something that gets you frustrated or angry or anything like that. Mistakes will happen, and as we all know, the famous Bob Ross, who always says happy mistakes, and I think that's absolutely right in art. You can make a mistake in art and it can turn out to be one of the best parts of your artwork. So anyway, sorry, I'm just rambling on here. Back to this tutorial. So you can see there, as I go along, I just erase off little bits of the pencil work that I've done there. Now, when I'm ordinarily doing a sketch, I won't use, especially if it's just a drawing for myself, which this initially was, but I kind of knew that I would do this as a Patreon tutorial if it turned out well. So I thought to myself, right, okay, I'll do it as if it is going to turn out well. But as I'm going along, I take off little bits of the sketch. Now, like I say, on the very, very bottom layers here, the colour there that I'm using from the Caran range is the pink white, which is really super pale. And when you're layering that down, you'll probably think, what is the point in this? But it just helps to give that little red tone that I can see on Miss Honey. Even on the lightest parts of her fur, I can still see that red tone. And it might be I think where the red is coming from is the studio, because she's just on the step of the studio, and it was quite a sunny day, and so I think the reflection of the red wood, the red stain on the wood, has come onto her, as well as the light getting deep down into her coat. So you can see here that these little dark lines that I'm putting in, if you look at, like I say, go back to the reference image. If you're looking at the reference image, you can see that there are two little dark lines there. But again, it's just the way the wind is hitting her fur. And right at the top of those dark lines, kind of like across the bridge of her head, again, it almost looks like a bluey grey, which is the reason why I was coming in there with that very light blue. And later on, I come in again with, I think it's Paynes Grey 30%, which again is a very, very pale grey, but it has that bluey, that cold blue to it. So I helped, that Paynes Grey 30% is what I used for right along the top of her back, and that little grey, light grey, bluey colour along the top of her head. Now, I know it looks like I'm working really fast here, but I'm not. This drawing took almost 8 hours, 7 hours 40 odd minutes, and I've brought it down into 3 hour bits. Sorry, 3 hours in total, but 3 separate bits so that you can follow along, because I think having a 7 hour tutorial is just ridiculously too long. So it's important that you don't think that I did it this fast when I was really doing the artwork. This is sped up a little bit. So again here, always going in the direction of the fur, and where it changes direction, make sure that you just keep following along with exactly how you see the reference image. So I'm still using this violet grey from the Luminance range, and I'm using, because I know that I will be adding a lot of layers, these first few layers I'm using quite a light touch with the pencil. So don't be going too heavy handed when you start getting into the fur, and you are, I mean, even here, this is the French grey that I'm using, but I'm just using it for the dark bits. But even at that, I'm still using quite a light hand, because it's easier to keep darkening something than it is to go too dark and then have to try and lighten things. So just keep building up your darks. When you're looking at the reference image, the areas of the rabbit that you think are dark, just add enough darkness there at the beginning to give you a good reference, things like that, and just slowly build up that darkness. There's no rush. And always remember, it's so easy. It's so much easier to keep darkening something than it is to, go really in heavy-handed and then have to start lightening something up. So again here, just at the top of her nose, there's this little ginger colour. And that colour that I was using, was the brown ochre. So a little bit darker than the brown ochre 50% that I initially used on the top part of that nose. But the reason I used the brown ochre 50 and then the brown ochre is, if you look at that, there are little darker bits on the bridge of her nose. So the brown ochre helped me just add in those slightly little darker bits. So I'm in there now. That was the Carmine Lake, and I was just going into the dark bit. Now you see that little dark bit that's running down the part of her nose where I'm working on now. Although the center of that is really dark, always remember that, especially when it comes to fur and things like that, that it is layered, and so that darkness does have layers. And so, for example, if you put like a dark line down the middle to create that little nose, on either side of that dark line, you're going to have to kind of like work out on a gradient way, sort of making sure that you fade out into the lighter areas, and that helps to give the the depth, the dimensions and stuff like that, to make it look 3D. Okay, so I think here I'm gonna just drop in a little demonstration when it comes to the way that I'm doing this fur here. Okay, so I've just got 3 greys for this demonstration, and what I'm talking about is the fur. So I've got kind of like a light, mid-tone, and a dark. These 3 greys. But what I want to show you is, and this was something I found myself doing when I first started out doing fur. So, like I say, when you're building up your layers, and I'm going quite heavy-handed here, but when you're building up your layers, and you've got like a whole body to cover, and you can find yourself going like this. Okay, so let me move down a little bit here. You can find yourself going like that, and then going, and it's almost like linear, like this. Do you understand what I mean? So it's almost like you're building up layers in rows. You want to try and avoid that. Let me try that with a darker color. So sometimes you would be inclined to go like this with your pencil, but for your fur. So these are your first strokes, and then come back in your next row and do that as you move along the body, and then come back in and do this. And you can see there what you're doing is it looks unnatural. So what you want to do is, and also as well, when you're doing these fur strokes, you want to kind of glide on and glide off. So you're kind of like doing a swiping motion like this. So you're coming down. I'm going to exaggerate this, okay? So you're coming down really light, darken up, and then flicking off again, okay? But in reality, all what you're doing is you're just doing that, okay? The reason why you're doing this is so that, let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit without losing the focus. There, that's a little bit better. So what we're doing is, when we're creating these individual hair strokes or fur strokes, whatever you want to call them, like I say, you want to just glide in to the page a little bit heavier and then lift off, and then as you're going along, this is what you're doing, rather than like that, because when you do that, you're creating a start and an end. And I know fur does that; it grows out of the skin, and so therefore there's kind of like, this would be your start and that would be the end. But we don't see that when we're drawing an animal. All we see is the fur in the direction that it's going, and so it's better to just create these really light strokes, and that'll make it a little bit more realistic. Now, back to this linear thing. When you're working on a body shape, okay, so let's just say it's like this oval shape, a little bit like Miss Honey's little fat body, okay. You've got the whole body to cover. So rather than going like this, okay, it's almost as if you're doing like the scales of fish, okay, because obviously each animal is going to be different. If you look at a fish, the scales sometimes are kind of like in a pattern, and they do go like that. But with fur on an animal, it's very rarely going to be like that, unless you're doing birds with patterns on their feathers. But with the likes of, so for this case, in any case, for this subject that we're doing here, Miss Honey, when you're doing your fur strokes, you want to kind of like do it like that. You want it to be as haphazard, but in the same direction, but just kind of like all over the place. You don't want to be going in a line or anything like that. You want to try and make it make the fur look as natural as possible. And there are times when, I mean, like when I was working on Miss Honey, there were times I could feel myself. I knew that I was kind of like doing this, working my way down the body like that, and before I knew it, I had a line, and I had to come back and rectify it. But so basically what I'm saying here is, don't make sure that you don't have this linear design on the fur. And when you're creating your fur strokes, again, I'm going to exaggerate it here, so it's almost like you're gliding in, you're gliding down on the paper like this, very gently, then it gets heavier, and then it flicks out at the end. But obviously all you want to be doing is little tiny strokes. And when you're doing your say like your first layers of fur, what I do is I hold the pencil about midway back, so about there, and that helps to prevent yourself from putting too much pressure on. And this is where, again, where paper comes in quite handy, because depending on the paper that you're using, the texture of the paper will help you get that fur look. So if you're using like a Bristol Vellum or something like the Fabriano Artistico, extra white hot press paper or the Derwent Lightfast paper like I'm using, they have beautiful textures to them, and they can really help you create fur textures. And so that's all I wanted to show you for this part of the tutorial. Okay, so we're back here. I just think sometimes maybe these tutorials that I do, they're not really detailed enough and probably don't really help a lot of people. So I thought maybe when I get into certain areas that I'm trying to explain, it might be a good idea just to, you know, stop the video, slot in a little demonstration of what I'm trying to explain, and hopefully that might help a little bit, and then just get back into the video. So here we are now back. So hopefully that little demonstration there about how to apply the strokes when you're going to be creating fur, and also making sure that you don't keep it in that linear pattern as well. I just want to point out one thing. When I was going through that little like clip, I was going, you know, you don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. What I meant to say was, I don't do this and I don't do that. So take what you need from the little bit that I showed you. It's not, you know, if you go around YouTube or other Patreon users and they have a better method that suits your style to creating fur, then please use that method. These are just the methods that I use, and they are by no means the only way that you can create animal fur. So it's important that you understand that, you know, just because you're subscribed to my Patreon channel doesn't mean to say that you have to follow everything I'm saying for gospel type thing. There's lots and lots of different techniques and tips out there from much better artists than I am, and so it's important that you kind of like get a flavor of all of them, and then you just adapt and apply whatever suits you and whatever makes you comfortable in the way that you're drawn. So anyway, back into Miss Honey here. So we're just coming down here in their little chubby cheeks, or we were. Now we're back up here onto the forehead. Like I say, whenever I was looking at the reference image, there's this really kind of like bluey grey part right at the top where we're working now. So that's why I'm not going all the way up to the top of the head here, because I know in a little bit I'm going to be coming in with this blue grey. This, like, I think it's the Paynes Grey 30% that I use, as well as a much paler blue from the Luminance range. It's the light Cobalt blue that I use. So light Cobalt blue and Paynes Grey 30% for the kind of like light blue grey bit, which we will be coming to when we come up to the top of the head. So you can see here, I'm just darkening up around the eye a little bit. And again, that comes down to what I say an awful lot of the time when I'm doing, so when I first created the eye and I first created that little rim round the edge of the eye, there was nothing else on the paper. But now that I've added a few layers of fur and it's a little bit darker, I can tell that I need to come back and I need to go back into the eye and I need to darken up the fleshy part just round the outside of it. And I think I come back maybe 2 or 3 times to that eye, because as the layers build up and it gets a little bit darker, I need to you know, create more value in there. And that's just the way you've got to do it with your artwork whenever you're doing it. I keep meaning to put up a video. There's a video. There's on Patreon here. I have a tiger tutorial that I did. I think about 2 years ago now. But before that, when I very first started drawing, I tried to do a drawing of a tiger using colored pencil. And when I look at it now, it's quite bad. But it's a really good representation visually of I think of trying to understand value and what values mean. And you know, when people say, you know, you've got to go darker, it doesn't mean that you get out a black pencil and just go darker. It means if you're working with orange and you need to build up your values darker, then you go into a darker orange, or you create like a shadow color for that orange, like an ochre or brown ochre or something like that. So I keep meaning to get that video done and put out, and I will do soon. So I'm just erasing some of the lines here around Miss Honey's ears. And now you can see here, I'm coming in, I'm building up these layers again. There's, if you look at the reference image, there is kind of like a little highlight round the outside of the ears, and that's obviously just the way the light is hitting her. And you can see there that I've missed out the recording part of the ears, but you can see, look at, I mean, like, I haven't finished them, I will be coming back, but you can see that they've got this really pinky tone on the inside, and then I've gone back in there with the violet grey to build up the fur colour. But like I say, I do come back to these ears. I don't know what happened when I was recording it. It just didn't record, or I didn't press record. So now I'm coming down round to the edge of the face, so kind of like where her face meets her body, and you can see there that there is a distinct there's like a distinct paler line where her little face meets her body, and so I know I'm coming up to this bit, so I'm allowing for that, and I'm going really, really light in, but to my eye, in that section, I can see it being a little bit pink, so I need to allow for that as well. I don't want to have too much grey in there, because I'll need to be coming back in with like the burnt siennas, the light burnt siennas, and the salmon colours that I had, and the pink white that I had as well from the Luminance range. And so you can see here, I've just started to build up the darker part of her body there, just so that it helps me understand where those light values are. Don't know what I've done here. There we go. Sorry, I don't know what I did there. But yeah, you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm building up these darker values. And I'm doing, like, they call it negative drawing, I think it is. And it's just so that it helps me see where the light part of her face that meets her body stops. And then I can come back into the light part, because at the minute the light part that you can see, it's far too light. It's not natural enough. So all I'm doing here is just mapping out where I need to work from, or where I can work from. So this colour here that I'm using is a beautiful colour, and it works really well with Miss Honey here, and it's the Taupe colour in the Derwent Lightfast range. Really, really beautiful colour, nice and dark, but it has that kind of it's like the same, it's like the Mars line in, you know, like the Mars Violet or the Ruby Earth in the Derwent Draw, and it has that kind of lilac-y, pinky tone to it, but it's a nice dark colour as well. So here I'm coming in now with the grey violet from the Luminance range. Again, very, very light strokes, and just helping me, trying to build up underneath her little chin there. Okay, we're coming up. We've got about another 10 minutes left here of this first hour on this tutorial. And then we'll be going into part 2, where we start working on the body a little bit more, and then we come down and do the feet as well. But you can see here, right at the front of the rabbit, Miss Honey, you can see that the way the light is hitting on her, it is very, very light. Now, you'll see in the finished piece, I don't leave it as light as what it is on the photo. I use some of the salmon color and stuff like that, but I'll explain that when I come to it. But what I'm trying to say is, just because it looks almost white there in the reference image, you don't have to strictly go by that, unless like you're doing hyper realism and you want it to be absolutely exactly the way that the photo is. And also as well, I at this point had no plans on doing like a background or anything like that, which would have meant that this little white part of her of the front of her chest here, it wouldn't have stood out. It would have looked wrong. It would have made her look like part of her body was cut off. So that colour there that I'm using is raw umber, which is a really nice colour. It's again part of the Luminance range, and it's let me just find it. It's a little bit like the wheat from the Derwent Lightfast range. But anyway, the raw umber in the Derwent Lightfast, or sorry, the Caran Lightfast is it's a pale colour, but it's kind of like a warmy grey colour with a little bit of brown to it if you look at it, and it's a really nice colour. But it helps me get that beige colour that I'm looking for, that flows down from Miss Honey's front part here. So again, I'm back in here now with this taupe, because where the side of Miss Honey's face meets her body, that part of her is quite dark. So that's why I'm using this taupe. And again, when you look at the side of Miss Honey there's little, as there is with her cheek and where her little like whiskers come out, there are little dark rivety bits down on the side of her body. All I'm doing with this taupe here at the minute is just putting those bits in to help me map out my dimensions and, you know, how far I've got to go with the feet and what have you, where the colours should be, where the darks should be. Again, just keeping the fur going in the same direction that you can see with Miss Honey. And also as well, you can see in the reference image there are little bits of Miss Honey that almost look like little white silvery streaks of fur running through her body as well, and it's just where the light's hitting them. We will sort that out once we've got all the layers down and the darker layers, because then you can come in with an X-Acto knife and pull those very, very fine details out. You can't do that until you've got all those layers down. You can use like like some sort of tool to indent the paper, and when you lay down your layers, it'll give you this really crisp line. But I prefer, especially when I'm doing fur, I prefer to use an X-Acto knife. I think it gives me a little bit more control, and I can keep the details really fine. So using the pink violet here, because again, to my eye, I can see quite a lot of red in Miss Honey, especially of her back end. And so I'm building up the layers with this light pink, this lightish colour, which is like a pink violet, and that's going to help me because that's the undertone, because that's the colour that's prominently, or not prominently, but it's the underlay, so to speak. Whenever I come back over it with a lighter grey, so to speak, that pinky violet colour will still show up. It'll be very subtle, but it will be there, as opposed to just laying down grey. You're not, and then trying to come in on top with a light pink colour. I think it doesn't give you the same results. So I'm just working on her two front little paws here, but you can see in the reference image there that there's kind of like this little teardrop bit. Incidentally, right after this photograph was taken, Amelia had the wonderful pleasure of clipping her nails. She hates getting her nails clipped, and I hate even watching it because she struggles and all the rest of it. And if you know anything about clipping animals' nails, you've got to be very, very careful, because they have little blood vessels in them, and you've got to make sure that you don't cut too far down. But when they're kicking their legs about and what have you, it's so difficult to do, which is one of the reasons why she gets let out a lot during the summer, so that she can dig around and wear the nails down herself. But during the winter and stuff like that, she's got to have them clipped, and she really hates it. So again here, to my eye, again, this is why I hate laying out colours, because you guys might be seeing a different colour here, but to my eye there's kind of like a little ginger tinge, almost like a beigey colour, little bit of an orangey colour, Mars, like a ruby earth colour, running through her front paws. And it almost looks to me as well like that they are in layers, that the part of her paws that meet her body that are like this gingery colour, then they go into this Mars violet colour, and then right down at the bottom towards the nails, they darken up a little bit. And so I really had to look at this image for a long time to try and make sure I was getting the colours right for her paws, because like I say, I was seeing lots of different variations in the colour in her paws. But if you see something different, if you think that when you're looking at this reference image on Miss Honey and you want to use completely different colours, you go right ahead and do that. And I think it's important that you use the colours that you think are the right colours when it comes to drawing Miss Honey, because like I say, we all see colour in different ways, and you've got to do what's right for you. Just because I'm using these kind of like Mars violet colours and these lavender colours and what have you, that does not mean that you have to use exactly the same colours. So long as you get your values right, and you make sure that the fur is going in the right direction, things like that. Real simple things like the fur going in the right direction and your values. It doesn't matter what colour you do her, she'll still look amazing. And as well, you know, when we're doing her little paw here, the fur is going in a certain direction here as well, so you've got to make sure that you keep that consistent all the way through. Right guys, this is we're wrapping up now this first hour, so I will see you in the second hour, and hopefully you're enjoying this. Don't forget guys, if there's anything that you want me to add to Patreon, if there's a particular tutorial that you would like me to try and do, or a particular medium that you would like me to do. I know somebody's asked me to do more graphite tutorials, which I will be doing, but if there's anything else that you would like me to do, please just leave in the comment section down below what it is you would like, or if you'd like to keep your comments private or whatever, you can just email me and I will do my very best to accommodate whatever it is that you're asking. So anyway, see you in the next hour.